Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to the February 5th meeting of the Lorton Core Study Plan Amendment Task Force. And first of all, we'll take a look at the agenda. And first, we can start with any announcements that the task force co-chairs may want to make, and also welcoming the task force members. And from there, we'll get into a Department of Transportation presentation and with Tom Burke, and then from there we will have another presentation on the draft plan text that was sent to you all a few days ago. And from after that, we'll just take a brief look at the schedule for the remaining meetings. Hopefully we're down to 2 remaining meetings. So if Tim or Walter would like to make any announcements or say anything to open the meeting, I'll turn it over to either one of them, and if not, I'll turn it over to Tom.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Walter. Glad that we've gotten to this point to transportation, and excited to hear what all is in store and what's going to be presented tonight. I have no further announcements to make. I don't know, Nick, if there are additional comments or announcement that you have.
Well, I think the 2 pieces of big news are the frozen tundra that we're all living in, and the Amazon Fresh is closed. One of the 3 grocery anchor stores in the Lorton area, or one of 4, I guess. We've got Giant, Lidl, Food Lion, Amazon Fresh. We're down to 3. There's a lot of chatter online about what that could be. I know that there's a hope because they're owned by Whole Foods, or Whole Foods is owned by Amazon, that it may become that. I would say that it would be highly unlikely that it would turn into that. I think that's anybody who's been involved in the discussions we've had over the last few years, that, the Kung Fu Tea closed, the Amazon Fresh is closed. That's more of a company or corporate decision, but the chances of these places are not thriving when they are here. And if they were thriving, they would be here. We would be getting more of them. And I think we can all commend ourselves for the amount of effort that's going into this to try to turn the tide of that. We'll see what that Whole Foods is. As everybody knows, that Shoppers kind of got split into what is now the Five Below, and there's LA Fitness and the Amazon Fresh. So it's a smaller pad site to begin with, but I'm sure everybody's eager to see what will come there, but would not get my hopes up for something spectacular in there. I've heard anything from Aldi to Sprouts going in there. But those were the 2 kind of big pieces of news lately coming through. Back to you, Steve.
All right, thanks. And with that, I will stop sharing my screen, and we can get into the transportation presentation that Tom has prepared for us.
Okay, share. Where do I share? There we go.
Very bottom. Should be a green button if you hover your mouse to the bottom there.
It says I sent a request to share, so I don't think it's not instantaneous.
You click on share, Steve. There should be something that says advanced options, allow others to share, or participants to share.
It says the host isn't allowing sharing for this meeting.
Let's see.
If you go to participants and then you select co-host, I just do this every freaking day, and then it gives Tom access. Do you see his name? And then if you click right to the right,
it says, let's see. Okay.
Yeah, select participants. And then the 3 dots.
Try it now, Todd.
Now the host isn't allowing multiple presenters sharing. It says I can replace the current sharer. Let me try that.
Yeah, do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, try that.
Okay, and I think that might work.
I just made you a co-host too, so.
It said for $10 it would let me in.
Do you all see my presentation?
We do.
All right. We're in. All right, so I don't want to take too much of the time. I know Steve and the DPD crew have a lot to talk to you about, but there was a couple things we wanted to talk to on the transportation front. I think the task force meeting coming up in 3 weeks is going to be more transportation focused. So I'm hoping that we can do this discussion, but I don't want to rush or, if people have questions, we're going to definitely talk about it. But so I'll get started. So over the past several years, we've talked about the BRT on Richmond Highway. And recently, the question has come up about whether the BRT should connect with the VRE. Sorry, too many acronyms. So I put together a quick presentation, and we wanted to get some feedback from you all about some options we might have with the BRT. For those that aren't aware, really quickly, the BRT was kind of born out of a DRPT study. DRPT is the Virginia Department of Rail and Public Transportation. From about 2013 to 2014, they published their report, I think, in January 2015. They did a study of Richmond Highway from Woodbridge all the way to Huntington. I know Huntington's not quite on Richmond Highway, but that general corridor. And they developed recommendations for BRT in 3 phases: Huntington to Hybla Valley, Hybla to Fort Belvoir, and Fort Belvoir to Woodbridge. And then they even added a 4th phase, which is a yellow line extension from Huntington to Hybla Valley, I believe with a stop also at Beacon Groveton. And don't pay attention to these years. 10, 11 years ago, we thought we could do it on these what now would be really accelerated schedules. But I think the first 2 phases are currently on like a 2033 schedule. Actually, I think it's on the next. Yeah, here. Phases 1 and 2 were part of the Embark Richmond Highway Comprehensive Plan Amendment that was adopted in 2018. And then our capital project section at DOT has been designing and putting the funding in place for the one. Some of you might be aware, but the one will be the BRT that runs in the median of Richmond Highway from Huntington to Fort Belvoir to the Pence Gate. And it's going to have stops at the PennDOT CBC, the Beacon Groveton CBC. Hybla Valley Gum Springs is going to have 3 stops because it's kind of a stretched out CBC. South County's got one, or Jerry Highland Government Center, and Woodlawn has one. And then it'll stop ultimately at the Pence Gate where the hospital is. Phase 3, we didn't really include in Embark Richmond Highway. We had discussions with South County Federation, and we decided we needed to have a much more detailed Lorton planning effort to get before we put the BRT on the map for phase 3. And that's what Lorton Visioning, or the Lorton Core Study, has become. Up until now, all discussions have talked about how the BRT would be in the Richmond Highway corridor, mostly an exclusive median running right of way. Prince William County, 11 years ago, was insisting that they're not going to rebuild the bridge over the Occoquan. So you got to get that BRT back in mixed traffic before you get to the Occoquan, because it's going to go across the river in mixed traffic. It's going to end at the Woodbridge VRE. We talked about stops with this group over the last several years. We didn't really talk about Accotink Village too much. Accotink Village was actually supposed to be the southern terminus of phase 2. And when our capital projects team got a consultant on board and really started looking into it, they moved the southern terminus of phase 2 to the Pence Gate. So as of right now, the Accotink Village area is really kind of up in the air as to whether it would get a BRT station or not. We haven't talked too much about it because it's a little bit outside the Lorton area. But we have talked about how Powick Road is not a good idea for BRT because of the historic church that's in the immediate proximity. The Lorton Road intersection was one stop that we decided needed to move a few hundred feet to the south so that it's more centered with Gunston Plaza. We added a new station at the Lorton Community Center and Library that had not been thought of as part of the DRPT study. And then there's one at Gunston Road, and then ultimately down at the Woodbridge VRE. So that's kind of what the phase 3 of the BRT has been thus far. So a question has been raised: what if we were to connect the BRT to the VRE? How would you do that? And does it make sense? Do we want to do that, or are there other options? So the red line is basically what the BRT has been to date, at least for our planning purposes. But what if the BRT were to run up Pohick Road, down Lorton Station Boulevard to the VRE station, and then connect back at Armistead to Richmond Highway? You would still have most of the connectivity to even to Gunston Plaza. You would probably have to kind of reconfigure your BRT stop at Gunston Plaza, but you'd be connecting to more population and jobs this way because you're connecting to the VRE station, and that what we're replanning. We're replanning Gunston Plaza, so we're hitting at least two of the sub areas. So the only con that we're really thinking of is if you're taking the BRT from Prince William, this is probably going to add a few minutes to the travel time because the buses will have to veer off of Richmond Highway, make their way around. But if you're in Lorton and you're going north, you're probably or south, you're probably not going to be affected that much. It's probably more beneficial to the Lorton folks. The one thing that we thought we could do is there's 3 bus routes in Lorton right now, the 171, 305, and 371. What if we kind of reconfigured those at some point in the future to feed the BRT? That would be an alternative. I guess we can stop. This doesn't have to be, we can be interactive here and kind of stop and ask the general question. What do people, we haven't really, every time we talk about BRT, like I said, we kind of just talked about what had been previously planned. And maybe this is before we wrap things up with Lorton core study. We wanted to get some feedback from the court, from the task force, from any public that might be here. What do y'all think of the BRT route along Richmond Highway? Do you think we should veer off and connect with the VRE? I don't know why I keep the BRT and VRE are too similar in my head is blowing up. But why don't I stop here, and there's a little bit more to the presentation, but we can stop here and get some initial thoughts. What do you all think?
So,
Yeah, go ahead. Good.
thanks, Tom. So we've had this conversation in several different venues over the last several years, and I guess the thought was at one point, like, hey, when you finish the BRT up north and see the successes and failures and see as we plan down here what it's going to be. And a lot of the concern I guess I've heard is, who exactly is traveling north up the Route 1 corridor and where are they coming from and where are they going to? From what I see and I hear, and this is, I'm probably not the greatest person in the world because of where I commute to and from, to have a big input. But what I see, especially coming south on Route 1, is that a lot of the people, it's part of our problem. They're not staying in the Lorton area. They're coming from north of us, heading to the south of us. Is part of it. And the other part of it is local Lorton residents. How many people, and maybe people on this call can chime in, are heading from Lorton on Route 1 north of Fort Belvoir? And where are your destinations there? And is the BRT a great, benefit to the Lorton area versus what most of our community sees as the biggest, things to overcome are that CSX bridge, for sure, and open up that lane on 95 southbound between 123 and Prince William Parkway and alleviate the cut throughs there. And I guess, is there any, and then what percentage of the people would adopt the BRT given that they're currently in their vehicles, traveling to and from where, I guess. And has there been any kind of study or data gathering to see where these folks are kind of coming from and going to that are on that kind of route? That's a lot. I'll leave it there.
Yeah. So yeah, I think there's two potential benefits to people in Lorton. The people, how are they going to use the BRT to get where they need to go? But I think there's people in Prince William that will likely, hopefully, use the BRT maybe to get to Fort Belvoir or to other points north. And if those people have access to BRT as opposed to using their cars, there could be an indirect benefit by having those Prince William people in the buses instead of in their cars. So but to be honest, I don't know to what degree I could tell you like how much less congestion there might be. But do people that live in Lorton not generally would they be commuting to Huntington, or would they be commuting to Franconia Springfield if they wanted to go into the core, into the Arlington, DC core?
So, I mean, I'll just speak for myself, but I think it would be good to canvass the others on this call. The number of times I have gone up Route 1 north of Fort Belvoir in the last year is less than one.
Would you if there was a better transit option?
No, because there's no destination up there that's drawing me to go up Route 1. I would go on 95 up to Springfield. I would go to points north of that. I would go southbound to Potomac Mills area, but there's nothing to draw me up the Route 1 corridor to go north of Fort Belvoir, certainly. But I'd really like to hear everybody kind of chime in because my experience may not be at all what everybody else's experience is. Kathy, you want to go ahead? Miss Martin, where did she go?
Kathy, you on mute.
Oh, Kathy, you're muted.
Sorry about that. I'm sure my husband wants to put me on mute more often.
I heard it. I heard it from across the house.
Yeah, I'm sure you did. We're in different rooms. I'm so loud. But yeah, piggybacking on what Nick said, when I first looked at this too, my biggest concern was alleviating our traffic problems on Route 1, which really are paralyzing, and also on 95. In terms of population going north, if it's Pentagon, we have a lot where I lived in Lorton Station, a lot of Pentagon people, Fort Belvoir people, they move there for the VRE, they walk to the VRE. And I see this community being extremely accessible to that DC corridor. The blue line is going to be a lot faster than taking the BRT as a commuter to New York for a million years. I would have definitely jumped on the train, especially when it's hourly versus the BRT. Though, and I loved how Nick said, see how it goes up north first. The one thing I did like that you said is studying those bus routes. I have a lot of former students that do live in Hagel Circle and a lot of families back in there. They don't have cars. So they're relying, and right now you'll see them walking in the street, including with strollers because of the snowcrete. I worry about them all the time. But a lot of them work at Springfield Mall, and they take the 171 and they have to cross over the street, Lorton Station Boulevard, to catch, I think it's the 371 then, I can't remember. But I see them doing that. There's no crosswalk there. That's another accident just waiting to happen. So I do think a study there would be worthwhile. And a BRT going from some of those communities near the library is really an essential travel point. Those could be people going up Route 1 corridor, but I don't know how many work options are there. I really think metro access is faster from our VRE. That's just my 2 cents.
Thank you, Kathy. Tom, did you have any questions for Kathy to clarify there?
Yeah, the 371 and the 305 both go to the Springfield area, the mall and the metro and VRE. I think one goes out to Silverbrook and one goes up Pohick, but they both kind of. But the connector does regular. Fairfax connector does regular looks at their routes. They might not look at every area of the county every time because the county is so large. But if there's local concern about the needs for enhancements, we should probably get in touch with the connector, and maybe next time they look at this area and the routes in this area, we can ask them to take a look.
That would be great, and it'd be wonderful to get some stakeholders who live in that area, that use those buses regularly to chime in. because I know there's needs.
Thank you, Kathy. Mr. Malone. You're muted, sir. There you go.
All right. How you guys doing? So I go through and I oversee the Lorton area with neighborhood and community services. So I'm housed and officed over at the Lorton Community Center attached to the library. We work with a lot of families that live in, of course, in that area. Kathy went through and mentioned the Hagel Circle area as well as some of the other areas as well that's surrounding at that point in time. There is a lot of individuals that don't have transportation that go up the Route 1 corridor for work. So whether it be a Home Depot or Lowe's or wherever else the case may be, that's definitely something that's going to go through and be helpful. We have a lot of staff that goes through and works in that Huntington area and a little bit north as well that also come down into the Lorton area. I know we got SAC staff that goes through and works in it. We got some staff where their transportation time probably hitting around an hour and a half just to go one way, right? So they're coming from that Huntington area. They'll take transportation over to sometimes taking the bus isn't the quickest route, especially on the Route 1 corridor, because there's so many stops, so many other detours that they do go through and hit. So a lot of them may go through and take the metro over to Franconia, but taking a bus from Franconia to the Lorton area is about a good 45 minutes to 50 minutes on the bus itself. So if it's not something that you don't use regularly, then it's not something that's ever going to affect you, right? But if you use it on a consistent basis and you don't have the means to be able to drive your own personal vehicle, this is going to be a great option for those individuals to go through and use to be able to get up and down. We also got a lot of staff that work just with the county in general that come up from Prince William County that take VRE. So being able to go through and connect those would definitely be helpful at that point in time.
And the other thing I was going to mention was the 171 doesn't mirror what the BRT would do, but it is a Huntington to Lorton connection, but it is in mixed traffic. Do you know a lot of people that use the 171? I'm wondering how long it takes to get from Lorton to like the Pendaw, Huntington area.
There's a pretty decent amount that go through and hit it from what we go through and talk with. I mean, there's teens that get on the bus and take up, there's families that are going up, there's working individuals and everything else under the sun. If I'm not mistaken, most of the time that they are going through and doing it, it is a pretty decent little hike in terms of time. So I think that is about a 45-minute breakdown as well. So, I mean, it's not the fastest thing to go through and do. Of course, some days are going to be a little bit faster than others just based on other traffic and things of that nature, but it is a nice little hike. So for someone who doesn't have that mean or doesn't have the means of their own like personal transportation, it's hard to schedule and make yourself work in those scenarios.
And the BRT, phases 1 and 2 are being designed to run in the median. So it's being designed to bypass traffic. There's still going to be time that you have to for the stops, for the boarding.
Sure.
And I think they're doing electronic fare collection so that you don't have to sit and wait in line as you get on the bus. You like there'll be a fare box off the bus where you pay for your ticket, and then if someone does ask you for proof of they scan it and they'll show that you paid for it off boarding. So that's supposed to save time as well. So the BRT, while it kind of mirrors a lot of the 171 route, it should offer some additional travel time savings.
Mm-hmm.
And we're hopeful that phases 1 and 2 we're getting closer. Hopefully 2033 is now the expected date that it might complete. But yeah, I'm curious. I'm glad to hear that. Well, I'm not glad to hear that there's people that are stuck on slow buses and everything, but I am interested to know that there are people in Lorton that do make their way up the Richmond Highway corridor that the BRT might help.
Yep.
Wendy, it is really good to see you, Wendy. You are
Hey,
missed.
good evening,
Go
everyone. It's
ahead.
good to see you all. Getting back to the question, I agree with Nick, especially when Nick stated that one of the biggest concerns we have here in the southern area is the CSX overpass. the congestion that we experience there. I'm not sure how the BRT is going to be extended down to Woodbridge, but unless the CSX overpasses is addressed, that pain point will persist. And I also agree with Catherine and Ali. I'm pretty sure a lot of the residents in the area, the Hagel Circle area, would definitely benefit from the BRT. Personally, um, whenever I go north of Fort Belvoir, I'm normally going north of Fort Belvoir on 95. If I have to go into DC, I'll probably drive up to Franconia Metro Station and park my car and jump on the metro due to parking constraints in DC. So there's a lot of pros and cons to having a BRT in this configuration. It all depends on the I would say the demographics that's going to be using it, if that makes sense.
And you all may be aware of this, but I just want to put that out there. By putting the BRT in the plan, it doesn't necessarily mean that the BRT will be built, in 10 years. It's just the first step in putting it in the county's long-range vision, and it makes it easier at some point in the future to do further studies and try to get funding like we're doing for phases 1 and 2. We're also looking very closely at BRT in the Route 7 corridor between Alexandria and Tysons. We're working with Falls Church and Alexandria on that, but we've spent a lot of time looking up in the Tysons area at how we might route that. So we're definitely looking at BRT more seriously these days. And I think it's been mentioned in past meetings that the NVTA, the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority, has developed a BRT action plan. There's like 30 or so routes within the Northern Virginia region that they've kind of mapped out to help future funding potential. And so BRT is becoming, Montgomery County has done a lot of BRT, Alexandria has done a lot of BRT planning. So it's definitely a mode of the future that we're hoping that we can kind of latch onto. There's already one up in Alexandria called Metroway that this would not connect with, but maybe at some point in the future we'll run this right up through Old Town. We were told not to 15 years ago by the city, but maybe things will change.
Well, Tom, before you go, I think that is great forward thinking to get a good general consensus on the need for a BRT 2030, 2040. This area will be expanded, plenty more residents, and a great need to connect our areas via bus transit. A lot of people will park their vehicle and jump on the bus, especially on the weekend. I could see myself doing it on the weekend if it's taking me to like Potomac Mills or to Springfield Mall, if I can get it like that, because I'm not constrained by time.
Not to go off on too much of a tangent, but yeah, I said 15. It's more like 12 or so years ago when we were working on the DRPT study. We touched base with the city of Alexandria, and at that time, that city council and the staff at that time was like, no, we're not really into it. The Old Town people don't really want Fairfax County people coming in. But over the last 12 years or so, I've gotten a sense, I don't know for sure, there's been turnover in staff and the council, and maybe at some point we'd be able to work on some kind of extension of the one, past Huntington into, it would be great if we could connect with what Alexandria and Arlington have done with the Metroway. But now I'm kind of thinking way beyond, this horizon, but it is definitely a possibility that we could potentially at some point in the future, work out something with the city of Alexandria where we actually shoot right up Richmond Highway into Alexandria into Old Town as well.
Well, and I just want to make one more statement. This is great for the Lorton visioning because if people can come to our area and enjoy our restaurants and the amenities that we have in the Lorton area, they don't have to necessarily drive. They can catch the bus, and enjoy the area. So that's my 2 cents worth. Thank you.
Dale.
Thank you. 3 points. Number one, I or my wife go up north on Route 1 to Holland Hall Senior Center 3 times a month, mostly for genealogical research, because that's at the Holland Hall Center is where they have a research library for genealogy. It's the only place you can go to get it other than Fairfax City. So that's it. It would be hard for me to go up there and shop because I couldn't bring 2 pieces of sheetrock back on the bus. So that kind of limits what I would be using that bus for. I don't shop up there. I don't use that unless it's something specific, a new storm door from Lowe's, and the only one that had it was the Lowe's in Alexandria. Number 2, I strongly recommend, Tom, you guys get with Ali Malone and the group at NCS that are at the community center, and you strongly survey their client base. That's going to give you an idea of the concentration, a number of jobs, et cetera, and where they're going, and et cetera. And I think you could probably do it easily there. Do it the Woods of Fairfax. You could probably get across probably 60, 70% of the people using that, and you could flyer on everything on the cars at the VRE parking area. And that also could give you at least a sense of how far people are going and from whence they come to do that. I guess the thing I look at when I look at your proposed map that's up there right now, to think that we're going to put large scale buses up Pohick Road, turning left and coming around Lorton Station Boulevard and back down, or vice versa, is interesting at best, because that would Pohick Road would need to be completely rebuilt to do that.
That is an excellent point. This is an articulated bus. It's a lot longer than the standard 40-foot
Yes,
bus.
sir.
So
Yes, sir.
it would definitely require some study in terms of whether this type of bus could even make the turns onto and off the public.
And we can't even get sidewalks built. So I mean, I'm trying to figure out what the name of God we would do with a 66-foot bus. So and I think finally, when BRT was designed these 12 to 14 years ago, I believe there was a strong belief that people, if you build it, people will go there to shop. I have yet to see that. I've seen the only places rebuilt in shopping have been in Prince William County, Potomac Mills area, or all the way up toward Huntington. And that's kind of it in between, not so much. So I'm not sure the stops obviously are there for people needing to use that as the single mode of transportation for them. But the other part of it, I think it's already been mentioned, is relief of the commuting traffic out of Prince William County. That's really what this is. It's a relief of the commuting traffic, trying to reduce the number of cars on Route 1, on 95, coming north. And to a degree that makes sense, and that may be the pattern of the future. That may very well be it, especially as we log jam as it is right now. We'll get a better appraisal of that when they start putting in the pylons for the third track for a VRE and going over near the Lorton Auto Train, and that pass-through traffic coming through there gets even further bottlenecked. So I think that'll be an interesting indicator. But some of this is I don't know. I was more focused on what eventually we would be doing to be bringing people in the Lorton area back down to the 3 core areas that we've designated. And I believe that's going to come in the second part of the presentation in a couple of weeks when we look at that more carefully. So thank you for your time.
Mr. Martin.
Hey, good evening, everyone. There's a lot of people advocating for BRT because of the obvious value. Um, and I myself, in 20 years of Laurel Hill, Lorton Station, Mason Neck, rarely would, like Nick and others, rarely have used the Route North corridor as much. So I'm going to advocate for the VRE a little bit more. So for 20 years, I go into DC. For a while, it was every day. Nowadays, it's twice a week, and I slug up 95, pick up slugs, or I drive 95. But really, if the VRE was more round the clock instead of just peak and peak hours, I would have used the VRE a lot more. It's much more sensible. So I look forward to the VRE being more on the hour. And then speaking of the VRE, if you look at the map here and the red connection between the blue loops, that red segment there is really not covering that much density. But then if you follow the blue loop through there, it's really covering a lot of Pohick and Pohick Estates, Lorton Station. I mean, thousands of homes up there. So I see a value of the blue loop, especially to get to the VRE. Um, and the VRE is will be a slug line and a connection because slug line will go to Pentagon as well as to Belvoir. So I do see a value of the blue, and I think the problem with Pohick is it does need to be fixed. And if that's what it takes, we need sidewalks and we need a 4 lane or at least a 3 lane through that Pohick. So I think that the articulating buses could go through there, and Lorton Station Boulevard is certainly adequate for that. So I see the value of advocating for the VRE in addition to the BRT bus line. So I'm going to yield my time for the rest of the presentation.
Mr. Shovelin.
Good evening, everyone. So I've said this when I've been on before about how we have the free parking at the VRE station, and there's a lot of people who ride the VRE up from farther south and have a car parked here and then get in their cars and drive to wherever. So the having the BRT station right there would be helpful for people like that. And I could tell I have ridden both buses from the VRE to Metro. The Metro ride back and forth to Franconia Springfield is about 45 minutes. To Huntington, it's an hour because of the traffic. And now the reasons I've had to ride the bus is because those are times when the VRE is broken down. So if, come 2030, once Long Bridge is hopefully done and VRE is running more trains more often, that should hopefully be less of a problem. But for now, like, I see the benefit of the reason one would take a bus to Huntington instead of Franconia Springfield is Franconia Springfield is a $6 metro ride to downtown, while Huntington is a $4 ride. And taking the buses, I'm not sure how much the bus rate actually is right now, but versus $5 for parking at either station. So you could park for free at our VRE parking lot, ride the BRT up to Huntington, and then you're only spending like $4 or $5 to get into downtown DC, which is incredibly convenient.
I know we have other things to talk about. I wanted to just jump ahead to this slide because there was another discussion. What if we wanted to connect to not only the VRE, but to Lorton Marketplace? Would we want to extend that bulb out to the BRT even more? Or would we want to keep it simple, Pohick to Armistead, this little loop? I definitely think there's value up here because, like was just said, there's pretty good density of residential and the commercial at the VRE station. Is there value also to serving Lorton Marketplace? And then how do we then get service to the community center? So do we do like northbound it stays on Richmond Highway, southbound it goes into Lorton, or do we do alternating routes where one goes up and down Richmond Highway, then the next one goes? There's ways we could potentially serve everyone. But what do people think? I mean, you can continue to discuss just the general one to the VRE, but I wanted to put this one on the table as well because uh, we've been replanning Lorton Marketplace as well. And should the VRE go that far, or is that a little bit too far out of the way?
Mr. Malone.
I mean, I truly think it would
Educate us.
be helpful for the Lorton Valley portion, especially with the fact that we're trying to build up that area as well in the future. So I think that that would be super helpful.
We're probably going to have the right of way on Richmond Highway to put the BRT in exclusive median running way. The one note that I would probably, I don't think we're going to do that on Pohick or Lorton Station or Lorton Road or Lorton Market or Gunston Cove Road. So we're going to call it the BRT on the blue line, but I don't think it's going to be. I mean, once you get back onto Richmond Highway, then I think you'll realize more of the time savings and the speed benefits. But I did want to throw that out there as well, that the blue line would probably not be designed quite the same as the red line would be because we've got more right of way on Richmond Highway to play with.
Hey, Tom, I was just going to mention one thing too. I am concerned about jump going into regular traffic if it did extend to Woodbridge. I mean, that just becomes a traffic mess, and I don't know how you stay, consistent with your schedule when you don't have dedicated lanes. But I know we're this probably isn't the time to talk about it, but you probably thought about that already.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, the river is Prince William County. The river is not Fairfax County. So that bridge would be a little bit more Prince William's purview and VDOT's than ours. And I know 12 years ago, the Prince William folks were like, yeah, like once you get the BRT south of Gunston Road, figure out a way to get it out of the median into mixed traffic so that it crosses the bridge as it's currently built, because we have no interest in rebuilding that bridge. Or I don't know if you could add to the bridge or whether I don't know what would have to be done, but Prince William was pretty adamant about it then, so we didn't even look at alternatives. But maybe moving forward, like I was talking about how Alexandria has had turnover and change and maybe some mindset, maybe Prince William has as well. So if and when this BRT moves forward, maybe there would be continued discussions with Prince William to see if they still feel strongly about that. Maybe there's been change and maybe they feel a little differently. That's a possibility, but that has been a concern, moving it out of the median into mixed traffic at some point around that industrial area heading south would.
Outside of the exact details of where it was located, I mean, in general, isn't the entirety of what we're trying to do to create us a bit more connected and to be a more connected entity? So, I mean, that's the goal here, is to make it convenient and to people to come there and to come there. It could be for work. Listen, the truth is probably nobody on this, or few of us on this call, probably even have been on a bus. I can't tell you. It's so funny. I was thinking about it. I've never been on a local bus, but but anytime I go to a foreign country, I'm willing to go on their buses all the time. I like it. So I'm not quite sure, but in either case, but we want one to bring people in. Those people who are going to come down here are going to be young people who may not have car, may not be afforded, want to be able to get together with groups. We're going to want them to be people to come to work and to work in those places and to be able to afford those places. So it's good for the community in general. It's good for those who don't have as much, as well as it is good for us. So it's a two-way street. But in general, we need more connectivity. So I think the more connectivity we put in there, generally speaking, I'm for. But you guys have to determine where the proper exact spots are and the timings and all that. But I think in general, more connectivity, it should be a general goal.
This is all good feedback. Graham and Steve, we can give a sneak peek for 3 weeks from now when we come back with a more full transportation. We had discussions in the past about Lorton Road being potentially road dieted to 4 lanes. Our analysis is showing that would probably be a bad idea because of the rising congestion that would come with that. So we had some slides about how we might be able to make Lorton into that main street, but I don't know if Steve and Leah and Graham, you guys have other agenda items. Maybe we can save this for the 27th or.
Here's what I would say. We probably maybe by the 8 o'clock hour, we'll probably want to move on, but
Okay.
maybe since we're not asking for really like a vote or anything like that, or even text at this point. This is more just kind of an introduction to these. I don't think that it's a problem to go over them real quick, and then we can maybe return to these with the full transportation discussion.
This is a general cross section of Lorton Road as it is today, and each intersection is different. But when you get to this is mid block where you just have the through lanes, and this is an example of what an approach to an intersection might look like, where you have a left turn lane and a right turn lane. I think our consultant was using, is it Tamarand? Is that a cross street? I gotta go back. I should have. But as you can see, as you all live it, you know that there's narrow pathways. The 8 foot on the is at the north side isn't bad, but really close to the road with no with hardly any buffer, no street trees. 5 foot bike lanes used to be considered okay. I think 6 foot on-road bicycle lanes are the new standard, but I think bicycle lanes on a 6 lane road that's designed for 45, 50 mile an hour traffic is crazy. I think the professional bicyclists that go out there in their, those cycling, what's that material? Not spandex. I'm thinking of Lycra. Those people, they might be comfortable out on the roads. They might actually be in the travel lanes for all I know, but that's what we're dealing with today. I don't know how many of you would ride your bikes on Lorton Road today. That was one of my key questions that I kind of wanted to get across so we started to look at how we might reform Lorton Road. If we were to do it without moving the curbs and without having very much impact to the adjacent properties, you could widen the pathway on the other side, but then you lose the buffer entirely. But some of those more timid cyclists could move up into the wider pathways and leave the on-road bike lanes for more of the professional cyclists. And I'm just using that as a phrase. But again, you still have wider pathways, but you have minimal to no buffers, substandard on-road bike lanes, still long crossings at the intersections. So then we thought, what if we were a little bit more unconstrained? We do not want to impact the properties along Lorton Road significantly to the point that they're not developable. Obviously, that would be a bad idea. But if we were to move the curbs a little bit and we were to go outward a little bit so that maybe we take a few feet into the properties on either side, you could have 10-foot shared use paths with 8-foot buffers that are suitable for street trees and lighting. You could have a much more inviting environment. The metrics we use show that wider buffers with street trees provides pedestrians with a better sense of comfort, cyclists with a sense of less stress. We typically look at comfort for pedestrians and level of traffic stress for cyclists, and these shared use paths would help to do that. So we could put these here. We can answer a few questions as it's approaching 8. But we wanted to put this out there so that you could think about it for a few weeks. And when we come back on February 27th, maybe we can have a little bit deeper conversation about how we want Lorton Road. And we plan to come with some cross sections for Lorton Station Boulevard as well. And I'm not sure, maybe Richmond Highway. Richmond Highway is, we've done a lot of work in past years, and we have like a generic cross section for Richmond Highway as well. But what do you all think of? How do you envision a main street? How did you or have you envisioned Lorton Road becoming more of a main street? What needed to change? And are we hitting the mark here? Are we missing a few things?
Again, I thought we were going to try to decide that this was not a thoroughfare for moving, to replace 95 during traffic. And instead, we would try to say that this is not a commuting lane, but our actual town. And therefore, to do that, we want to maybe we want to slow it down. We want to make it so that we want to make it maybe 2 lanes each. It doesn't need that many commuters coming through there. and we have 2 lanes in most every other place. So that was the general thought. That would give you a lot more space in the middle, and then that was going to be tree lined or something like that. Or so you have a little bit more. You've got to have some stuff in there. And if we eat into the all the frontage, on the properties, then we're already constrained there too. So we don't really want to do that to sacrifice it in exchange for giving another commuting alternative for people out of the area.
Well, when we come back on the 27th, we did the analysis with a 4-lane Lorton Road. We did the analysis with a 6-lane. We can kind of give you a sense for how much worse the congestion might get. And maybe it'll come down to you all making a decision as to whether that higher level of congestion. I'm going to be honest. I came in with high hopes about the road diet. I thought, the daily traffic on Lorton Road really doesn't warrant 6 lanes. It's the peak period traffic that warrants the 6 lanes. So I was hopeful that we could make it work as 4.
But
It was
that peak time, and you're right, it's not except during those peak times, but that
Right.
peak time is the people taking cuts from off of 95. So, but the point is, if that didn't look like a good option, and they're gonna find it on their ways, find it on everything else, they're just not gonna go that way, and it'll balance it back out.
Our travel demand model, which is all mathematical equations based on it, predicting
sure.
how traffic will occur.
Of course.
Because we're in a funnel with the Occoquan and the Potomac, and there aren't a lot of alternative routes. The model just thinks if you lower it to 4 lanes, you're going to have almost the same demand on that roadway, but with 2/3 of the capacity. And it's going to become much more of a parking lot. Even the 6 lane is going to have congestion on it. So maybe the best thing to do is to bring like a snapshot of both.
Yeah, I'd love to see it.
Yeah,
Listen, again, I don't know everything. I'm not in a position to know. It would make sense to me logically, but again, I'm not an engineer. But it would make sense logically if your Waze said it's going to take you just as long to get off of onto Lorton Road as it is to go on stay on 95. I would think you would then stay on 95, but maybe the traffic models say differently.
We can definitely be prepared to present both sides, and maybe you all can have a conversation.
But that was my only comment, is that I like to see a center, because 6 lanes across and then a centerpiece at all without anything in it, it's going to be just one giant, thing of cars.
We thought we would have to remove the center median. We didn't remove it entirely. We reduced it from about 15 feet to 3 feet with no trees. So it's not going to be as pretty, but we did that so we wouldn't have to go further deeper into people's front yards along Lorton Road.
I know, like I said, the only way to do it and accomplishes get you something that looks pretty. I mean, listen, just go down Route 1. You go down as the hill, from Gunston Road up to to the Gunston Plaza, and it's 6 lanes across, and it's just ugly. It's just, I mean, you can't make that the center of your walkable town area. It's going to be too big a divide. You've got to switch it. It can't be 6 lanes across. It just can't, and then succeed without, because it immediately cuts everything off. There's not a chance in hell you're getting through there. It's too long a distance. So I'd love to see, again, something with a centerpiece, reduce the lanes. I think you have to do it either way, and it solves the problems. It will create one problem, which is it means it will be as busy, if not just as busy, maybe could be busier, but hard to say. Sometimes I've gone through there and I couldn't get through there for 15 minutes to get through the intersection. But my sense is either way you're going to have that same problem, but I'd like to see the study.
I think Angelique is not here today, but she had made some really good comments in the past regarding Lorton Road. And I think one word that came up was more boulevard type of a road. And I think, not to speak for Kathy, but talking about connectivity and ability to cross from Lorton Station on thinking about the Armistead Road to Lorton Station Boulevard access and being able to cross it. That looks very difficult to try to cross from one side to the other. So just concerned about, one's ability as far as connectivity to cross from one side to the other. I think we were talking about, and I think it was maybe Wendy who brought this up, was in the middle median area having more vegetation down there as well. So again, it kind of the word kind of boulevard kind of came up. Kind of my comments. Dale, go ahead.
Yeah, I think a couple things about Tom. You were asking what is the material that the bikers wear when you have a 5-foot wide bike path on a 50-mile-an-hour road. I think the name of the apparel is plaster of Paris. That's usually what they're adorned in. When I look at this, it's lacking two things. Number one, I don't see any 18-wheeler or 12-wheeler truck representations for the traffic. That's a real reality, given what we have from Economic Development Authority that places businesses within our confines. And number two, if you look at the unconstrained model, that clearly favors traffic moving through. It doesn't favor pedestrians trying to cross it. It favors keeping the traffic going, because if you have to turn left or have to turn right, you can get off and let everyone continue to do 62 miles an hour down there. So that it doesn't bother me that you don't have the turn lanes. If you have to wait and stop, you have to wait and stop. That's part of it, but that would give you 22 less feet of living space trying to cross over. I think the other thing is that there is no cross road connection, and that's something the 2040s task force talked all about. It is connecting Shoppers food warehouse area, connecting Lorton Station work area, connecting the Gunston in a walking sense, and this does nothing to enhance that. Doesn't even give you a chance, because it maintains the traffic flow. And I know that's hard because you're undoubtedly being told, keep the traffic going, Tom. Tom, design roads and keep them at speeds that keep everybody through. VDOT making sure that we're a high-speed urban corridor up 123 all the way to past Burke Lake Park. That's great for people coming up that way. It's not very good if you're trying to pull out onto 123 from one of the side roads, which 15 years ago people didn't do. 15 years later, 3 people dead in the last 2 years. So, I think there's some realities here that we just have to admit up front and come up with something different and better than just let's widen the road or let's put another lane in. I just don't think that's going to work. I just think we need something different looking than this. And I wish I was smarter, and I'd know what that would be if I was smarter.
Okay. We can definitely further this conversation in a few weeks, and I can definitely see back to Steve for the other agenda.
All right. Thanks, Tom. I'm going to try to make this as quick as possible. I sent you all the presentation earlier today, and really what we want to talk about. What we wanted to kind of talk about first is how in the 2 previous meetings, you had an opportunity to look at the land use from a area-wide standpoint, and reviewing the recommended land use framework. And then that was the first meeting in November. And then in December, you all had a chance to look at the neighborhood and site-specific recommendations at a very early draft stage. And tonight, the draft plan text that you'll be discussing addresses the planning of several topics that will be fundamental in the success of achieving the community vision for future land use and development, as listed on the right of the screen here. Just like those 2 previous meetings, we need your assistance to determine if the plan text that was sent for your review clearly reflects priorities of the community vision. And also, we're asking, are there any other items that should be added or improved upon in in revisions before a final vote is taken by the task force at a later meeting. During the discussion, it may be helpful to consider the visioning process that included meetings and public outreach, task force meetings and public outreach efforts, where you all identified various sites and features that already contribute to the identity, character, and sense of place for the Lorton area. And some of those descriptors that we heard from you all about what makes Lorton special today are listed above the dash lines, and then some of the areas where the community feels significant improvements may be needed are listed below it. So the first of those topics is placemaking, which is a collaborative community process that shapes the public realm and strengthens the connection between people and places. And it involves the intentional shaping of open spaces and streets to capitalize on local assets as an inspiration for improved vitality while creating safe and accessible spaces for the community. Along with promoting better urban design and improved connectivity, placemaking can also facilitate creative land use patterns by emphasizing physical, cultural, and social identities that define a place and support its ongoing evolution to the benefit of local community members, businesses, and visitors. It's also important to note that when placemaking inspires daily activity, it will often be a springboard into more specialized events within the public realm. To put it simply, as this diagram provided to us by Renaissance Planning indicates, as more people become familiar with using a publicly accessible space on a normal basis, over time that space has a greater chance of becoming a venue for specialized events that will attract more and more community members. The Board of Supervisors, so now let's talk about housing for a second. The Board of Supervisors adopted several housing policy goals in the comprehensive plan to facilitate greater opportunities for everyone who lives and works in Fairfax County to have access to safe, decent, price-appropriate housing within their means and in accordance with the One Fairfax policy and countywide housing strategic plan. On the right, we have a list and photos providing some examples of the types and forms of residential use types that should be accommodated to address community-wide housing within a mixed use development pattern with higher densities. Accommodating new land use categories along with higher density and intensity levels in the suburban center will need to be paced with the development and provision of public facilities. This includes community services, transportation infrastructure, and utilities that can adequately support proposed changes. And the notes that you see on the left, as Tom talked about BRT, you kind of see how public facilities and transportation improvements and all those things that support communities and future growth and development are related to need to be paced in relationship to the growth that's being planned. So for open space, the comprehensive plan generally considers open space to be land that is not intensely developed and provides public and social recreational, physical, and mental health benefits. And you can see here a few notes about open space and how the comprehensive plan views open space. Along those same lines, planning for mixed-use activity that facilitates more urbanized development forms will generate the need for including more publicly accessible parks and open space to address a more diverse range of users. Urban parks can vary in size from very small pocket parks situated along pedestrian-oriented paths to large civic open spaces that will encompass many acres and a wide range of amenities and accommodate large community gatherings. Urban parks can also address a variety of community interests, from active recreation to interpreting cultural and natural resources. And when we think about park spaces, as we've talked about park spaces all throughout the task force, the time the task force has been meeting, the real understanding is that as Lorton grows, there's a need for greater diversity in park amenities. Next is environment, and having access and proximity to nature within a clean environment supports the health and improves the quality of life for all community members. So as a trade-off for considering an allowance for greater development potential, the comprehensive plan sets higher expectations for commitments to environmental stewardship in planning areas, in special planning areas such as suburban centers, transit station areas, and community business centers. This could include commitments to setting aside more open space for the preservation and restoration of environmentally sensitive resources, size and storm water management and erosion control infrastructure to operate above minimum standards, increasing the size of natural buffers, and reducing greenhouse gas emissions, among many other measures. Heritage resources can enhance the quality of life by providing a sense of continuity with history, strengthening social ties, and fostering community pride. In addition to prioritizing long-standing goals for preservation, culturally and historically significant landmarks that provide diversity in the area-wide landscape and built environment can also be used to inspire and influence design, future development in ways that are unique for Lorton. So that was the end of that. And here's a look at the schedule, the remaining schedule for task force meetings. As we discussed earlier on February 26th, we will be reconvening to complete the transportation study.
Steve, can you stop for a second? You went through all this stuff. You gave a whole bunch of stuff. You read them. What were you doing? Is that you're just telling us what it says in here, or are you asking us for that we agree with everything, or that
we're going to do what we've done in the past? This was just the setup for the conversation, things to consider in the conversation. We're going to do what we've done in the past, where Graham is going to share the text that you all have had a chance to review, and we're going to take your comments on that. But
I just want to make sure. I didn't know when you went through all that, if that was just background or not.
It's background, and really, we just want you to have this idea that a lot of the information that you've seen and that you've reviewed and that you'll be discussing tonight for those topics that we looked at are how it's really related to the sense of place in Lorton. Even the things that Tom talked about with transportation, how you move about Lorton. It's all about the sense of place and the character that the sense of place, the character and character that become to define Lorton as a place. That, you know, when you all first started, when we first started with you all and started learning from the task force, sense of place and character and identity were some things that you said needed to be strengthened. And when you think about these topics that you're talking about tonight, just think about how they can help you, how they can help you do that. And
okay, I got it. Thank you.
And with that, I'll turn it over to Graham, and he can share the text with you all. And also to Nick to lead the discussion.
Got it? Graham, you
almost got it. Hold on one second. Okay. Are y'all seeing my screen here?
It's coming.
We can see it.
Yeah. Is that good for everyone, or should we single page it? Or there we go.
How's that? Is that better?
I think you could probably zoom out a little bit more.
If anybody wants to zoom in, there's 3 dots above. It says Graham Owen's screen. If you click up there, you can actually increase the font size if you want on your own personal computer.
Good to know. So I'll let Steve go through the text with you, but just for those that weren't able to join the past 2 calls, we used the same approach in the past two meetings where we were going over land use framework and a lot of the guiding principles. And we'll go through the draft. We're calling this is a process that we call the straw man. And so what we do is we'll go through the text, and then if you have specific points or questions or suggested edits on any given area, we'll flag those here. We can't usually make changes on the fly. It's just kind of hard, but we'll make comments and say, we need to strengthen this language. We need to move this over here. This is unclear. Whatever the case may be, we'll just note that in the sidebar, and that way, when we're putting together the final draft for your review at the last meeting, we'll have everything together all in one kit and caboodle with the other sections that you've already previously reviewed. So what you're seeing here is really just those sections related to the topics that Steve was talking about. So a lot of the pieces related to the core area and related to some of those other guiding principles around land use for the town centers and for the established residential neighborhoods, for example, as well as the innovation center and some of the areas further south in the industrial. We've gone over that, so we didn't want to rehash any of that material here today. This is really just about kind of those interstitial spaces, those spaces between, and really trying to make sure that those are a part of this idea of bringing Lorton together into one kind of unified vision. So that's the goal for tonight, like Steve was describing, is kind of those additional elements beyond just the core area, density and land use. This is more about kind of the other parts of it.
And just to add to that, when we have all your comments from these items tonight, it's likely that some of the things we hear from you tonight are also going to help us when we make changes to the things that you discussed previously too. This is from a land use aspect and all those things that go along with land use. The goal is to come out of this meeting and have all that wrapped up, and so then the only thing that you won't be familiar with when you wouldn't have commented on will be the transportation information that you get a crack at the next meeting.
Got it. Okay. I did not have any comments on page 1 that I had. Does anybody else have any comments on the first page here? Not seeing any. I'm going to scroll down to page 2.
Sorry, guys.
And as you look at this information, one thing to note is that this is all part of the adopted plan. What we want to do with this is bring it from the end of the Lower Potomac District recommendations up to the top of the Lower Potomac recommendations. So as you go through not only the suburban center recommendations, but also go through any other recommendations for other areas like the areas around Fort Belvoir and look at this information. The goal is that anyone who was looking at Lower Potomac and looking at doing something from a land use standpoint and development standpoint in Lower Potomac, that they see us up front and understand that as they're doing that development, that these are some of the things that they need to include as they redevelop.
Okay. I don't think I had any comments on this one here from my notes. Anyone have any comments on this page 2 here?
I do. Nick, on numbers 15, 16, provide well-screened off-street parking areas, keep these parking lots in scale with the development in the neighborhood. I'm assuming that is to accent the commercial development within, not commuter development like Horner Road lot, etc.
It would mainly be unless there is some type of commuter element adjacent to a site or integral to a site, like at the VRE station per se. And at the VRE station, you're going to have to combine a means of having commuter parking. If you build on the VRE lots, you're going to have to replace that commuter parking and also have parking for the residents. So it's really a context based. If there's an area where it makes sense to have commuter parking, of course, some of this parking that needs, the parking that needs to be well screened and offsite and in scale with development includes the needs of the commuters who are also going to be using that site.
Okay, as long as it's not going to get interpreted that we're going to create a commuter parking area for people coming up from the south in order to park here and go north, because I would
That's
be
not the
opposed to
intent.
that.
That's
Okay,
not the intent. Unless they're at the VRE station using DRE or other services at VRE. So.
Yeah, and Dale, another part with this, screening often is kind of recommended when you have commercial against residential. So that might also be a key factor here, is just making sure that just from an appearance and a visual aspect, that people want to see, well vegetated, well landscaped parking lots, especially when they're adjacent to residential, where they're in their homes and that sort of thing. So that's a fairly common thing when you have that abrupt transition between commercial and
Could you
residential.
put the two words in there, community serving?
Thank you.
To Dale's point, work
Thank
that
you.
into that description somewhere, community serving, or some other better words than those two. But Dale, do you think that?
Yeah, I agree.
Clarify?
I agree. Community serving is correct. All right. Thank you. You say it better than I did, Lenwood.
Any further comments? Page 2.
Those distinct utility and landscaping corridors, all of that is native species that needs to be included in there, not for developer convenient species, native species, native to this area.
You talking about over here, Dale?
I was looking up at 1920.
1920.
And as 1718 as well, and 1920, and 23, 24, all of those, it all needs to be native species within that, not they'll say it better than I will. Graham, I have faith in you.
Sounds good.
Okay, moving down to page 3. Very good. Any comments on page 3?
Same on 7 and 8, that would be a native species.
I know one topic that's come up here before. Lorton has a specific type of architecture in a lot of places that mimics the Workhouse Art Center. Has that been inserted in here in some language?
It hasn't been. One thing that we did include, there's a change. The only change that we included in here, because this is the adopted text that we've just moved up to make it so that people don't lose it, frankly. We added this language in here about the Lorton Suburban Center, which is really kind of referring to our area. But to your point, we could also talk about Laurel Hill and that planning sector as well, because you're right. There's an architectural theme, obviously, with Laurel Hill and the workhouse and everything. So we could have something in here about that language, where it's not just unique to Lorton Suburban Center, the CBCs or development centers, but it's to each of the individual planning sectors that make up the district, basically.
Or maybe even district wide, even because just
Yeah,
thinking about.
Lorton Station itself kind of has that, there's a lot of, brick.
Mhm.
Certainly the arches, the brick, there's a common theme as you drive through the area.
I had a quick question, and I know we'll probably get this later, but I see this as part of it. When do we get into like branding of Lorton? I know that's not the topic of 2040, but it seems like when you're doing the planning of this, that one would do this. And I'll give you an example, like the Workhouse Arts Center. I mean, Lorton was always, when I was growing up in Springfield, known as, like the prison place. And my husband and I actually ended up buying my uncle's house that was built by one of the prison guards, and we were doing some research. And I guarantee you some of these bricks were made at that kiln by one of those prison, and that's kind of cool. And then we were doing more research. We found out that a lot of the houses around here and around Lorton were actually made with Lorton kiln bricks. I mean, so that kind of stuff kind of sticks with the grit of this area. So that was just really my question, the branding. When does that happen?
The the branding is something really with the comprehensive plan. We're going to want the comprehensive plan to kind of be a foundation for future efforts for branding. And part of how we're doing that is in the implementation section that was included in the first drafts that we sent out in November. There are some recommendations for potentially identifying local champions, like different groups who can become involved with furthering the case that's being made for the plan change. As far as really specifically having branding in the plan, it doesn't really come forward in the plan, but there is an opportunity to recommend ways of doing things like branding as a
Got it.
as a kind of as something that kind of springs forth from the plan.
Got it. I would love to see personally in this a little bit more artsy type stuff. There's a town in Maine that's known as a really artsy kind of town, and they've got like some really cool bike things, like kind of get the Lorton Arts Center, and their influence more throughout the entire Lorton area, including the eastern part.
And I think we touch on that too as we get to placemaking. As we
Got
get
it.
in as we get into placemaking, there's some places that we've started that part of the conversation, and we'll definitely take a look at that as well. And we want to hear from you too if you think it goes far enough, or if there's anything to add to that.
That's super. Thank you.
Mhm.
And Catherine, if you want to send us the example from Maine of kind of what, how you saw that and kind of what it looks like and everything like that, that'd be helpful just as we're thinking through various examples of placemaking, for example, which you'll see on a couple of slides down of
Oh,
some of the things
super.
that need.
Yep.
Yeah,
I'll send it to you guys.
sounds good.
Any more input on page 3? Moving down
Yeah.
page 4.
And Dale, to your earlier point,
do we want to try to define that architectural theme thing to try to steer it to the workhouse or similar, instead of I just have a fear of a big developer come in with some ideas of something very different that he's going to try to start a new theme with or something like that. Just another like two word something consistent with the history of Lorton, and I'm not married to that. I'm just trying to avoid a new theme.
no, it's a good point. Yeah, I'm updating that comment here, Linwood. So Laurel Hill, we call the planning sectors called Laurel Hill, even if that's not necessarily the name that we're after here in this particular instance. But yeah, we can do that. So we'll reference the workhouse in particular and kind of that history and the architectural history there.
Yeah, the language that in the presentation that I was that I tried to run through pretty quickly. The language from the comp plan does talk about providing a sense of continuity with history, and
Well, and that's where we get into loggerheads, because I was going to say Liberty, and then you look over at Liberty, and clearly there's an architectural style that was remaining there and enhanced there, and then you look adjacent to that the developer Elm Street came in and put in townhouses that are absolutely in conflict with that basic design. The flat roof townhouse, it didn't blend. It doesn't look like any other townhouses in any other development around. So I mean, that you just have to be careful. I agree with Catherine and Linwood saying that there's got to be a theme here that we got to agree to before we can go ahead and look at the architecture to bank up against it. And I know I'm dating myself, but I'm going back to the arches were at the workhouse, and that was included in the front design of the school. Different from the Westfield design of the school. So, I mean, that was one, even though you copied one design to make the other and save the money on the architectural fees, you still changed it to a degree to blend in. I don't agree that you have to make the brick the same color as the workhouse, but brick is a significant architectural pattern here that you have. And I'm just trying to find. I don't have better words for it. I like established consistent architectural themes. It's going to probably drive ARB a little crazy, because when we look at some of the most recent buildings that have been built here, not all of them are within that same theme. In fact, they're directly oppositional to it. So you just have to kind of think that through.
Tim, you got your hand up.
Yeah, just a suggestion to say conduct architectural themes that are consistent with the history of the area. So you've identified architectural themes first that are consistent with the historic development of the site, of the area even. Yeah, patterns is good.
And we'll keep working on this to incorporate some of the edits over here. But I think that's good. Yeah. Any other thoughts on architecture?
You may want to reference the whatever, I won't call it authority, but whatever leadership role was taken into establishing the historic center of this area. So it's consistent with what was authorized.
Sounds good. All right. Dale, I'll update this section in line with your prior comment. Okay. On native landscaping.
On number 9 there, is there a way to insert maybe not only along roadways, but within the medians? Just trying to echo comments from before of trying to kind of slow down and make it more of a pedestrian-friendly boulevardy trees in the medians or vegetation in the medians. Not just limited to kind of along the roadways, I guess. The maybe that fits, but just thinking of that, it seems to me like that's outside.
Street trees along roadways, both roadways and within medians. Okay.
If we got rid of those bike lanes, because I literally have seen very few people that are willing to risk their lives with a tractor trailer driving on Lorton Road. You know, that's another 6 feet, wouldn't it be? That we could get by getting rid of the bike lanes, 3 feet on each side.
Tom, do you know can you recall off of your diagram the current width of those
I think they're
bike?
I think they're 5 feet each.
No, nobody. I mean, I have very rarely seen people use them. Again, they're not really safe feeling.
The number 19, the control use of temporary commercial advertising signs, are those like the ones that people kind of stick in the ground? I mean, I think those are banned anyway in the county already, aren't they? I saw VDOT picking up a bunch the other day near me.
Yeah, it could be the ones that you stick down in the ground with a flag on them. It could be the little guys that dance around. It could be any number of them.
Yeah, now open or coming soon. I think there are a lot of different temporary signs.
Yeah.
Are they prohibited anyway? I mean, I'm just wondering in the comp plan language whether it's
some of them are actually allowed by permit, but a lot of the ones I think that you were thinking where people just stick them in the ground in different places, they're usually illegal, and code compliance has the right to come and take them out of the right of way, things of that nature. But I think with this, it's more thinking along the lines of if you do have temporary signage saying something's coming soon on the side of your building and it's permitted by the county, maybe it should be in better condition or made of more I guess more hardy materials than some of them you see that blow in the wind and stuff like that over time.
Okay.
Because there's unpermitted signage, that temporary signs that people can people throw out and can be removed by the county. But then there are other forms of temporary signage that we do permit and allow for I think up to 90 days or 30 days, three terms, 30 days renewable in some jurisdictions.
Got it. Yeah. Any more comments on page 4? Let's move down to page 5, please.
So, Steve, do you want to maybe describe the setup here just so that they understand what we've already reviewed and what we're reviewing today?
So you'd already reviewed the language that covers the guiding principles that you all adopted on January 26th of 2021. So we're not looking for changes to that, but we gave you this information that you've seen before because we want you to see how we are relating those guiding principles to the area wide consideration. So you had a principles that were used to guide the visioning process, and now we are taking those principles, most of those principles, as their own subject for area wide considerations and combining them with the adopted policy, with the countywide policy plans guidance for those topics as well. So this is basically kind of trying to align the visioning process and the guiding principles that you did with the adopted policy that the Board of Supervisors has adopted to help strengthen the principles in the form of the comprehensive plan text. So the first,
as I guess I'm looking for the term. I see like connectivity, but maybe something added along the lines of like a single walkable district. Something that maybe a unifying kind of like a one. We have a lot of talk, I think, about like individual nodes and connectivity between nodes, but not something kind of that unifies the language of saying, kind of a single walkable district.
And I think that's I think the idea that you are discussing right now, Nick, is also part of what we're trying to do when you get to the open space, to the parks open space and pedestrian network, where you have there's this recommendation to have this area that is covered by pedestrian, cycling, and active transportation facilities that not only connects parks and not only connects all the open spaces, but it also allows the integration of this new development that could take place to also be integrated within that single network that you're talking about. So, is that what you're meaning?
Yeah. Graham's got it memorialized a bit there. Anybody else on page 5? Not seeing any. Let's scroll to 6, please. Anybody have this mostly depictions, but anybody have anything on page 6?
Nick, is this supposed to be a representation of the whole area wide or more specific to Lorton?
It's
the core area.
Core area. Okay.
Yeah, and it's really just examples of things that could be done. It wouldn't. It would be the core area. It would be gateway sites. The kind of innovative employment activity that we're thinking fits better along Richmond Highway South. It's just ideas for some of the types of ways that the sense of place and identity can be improved.
Okay.
And these aren't the only. If you don't like some of any of these examples, if there are other things you'd like us to show.
I was trying to, you're talking about the core area, and I agree with you in terms of the photos you've provided. If it was larger than this core area, I would probably include something else in addition to what you have. But I think for the core area, this works very well.
Anyone else?
No, I actually appreciate the examples that were given. And I know they're examples. One of the things that I was looking at was the interactive art. In some cities, when they have interactive features, a lot of cities have where you can actually do a light workout when you're jogging or running. You can stop and do pull-ups, sit-ups, something to that nature. So this is a great idea, and I especially like the lighted underpass. That's not only is it provides safety, but it brings life to the area.
One thing I might want to suggest we update is figure 1, Steve. I'm realizing it's informal gathering space, but it's not really. It's more of an example of like just nice landscaping and a sidewalk, right? So I don't know. We might want to. I like the picture; it's pretty, but I don't think it describes what DCI called it.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I was looking at right now. It
Yeah.
is the gathering space that hard top behind the
I don't know. No, I don't think
behind
so. I think that's like a
the
parking lot.
yeah. So
It's truly informal.
Fleeting. Yeah.
hey, how many times have we gathered in the parking lot of the community center? You know, so after a meeting.
Okay. We're good.
Okay.
Down to page
Page 6.
6. Comments on page 6, anyone?
The only comment I want to make on 6 has to do with I mean, gets the whole thing is really quite general, so I get that, and it can mean a lot, but we need to make sure we're not trying to put too many open space type parks or forested areas in the center town. We do need a center square. So I don't know where that's in this document. I've looked for there needs to be a center plaza of some sort, a gathering place that fits as part and parcel of the park and recreation amenity being put there.
Yeah. Tim, as I jot this down, I think we can do that. And I think the figure 7 that Steve's gonna go over, and I assume you'll probably have some comments on it. What we'll show there is there's a couple things. There's existing open space network and park network that exists today. There's some additional areas that we would recommend that be added to that just based on natural features like stream valleys and that sort of thing. And then what you're describing in terms of like having a common green or a central square within the core area, we have tried to express that, and what you'll see are much smaller spaces, just given that they're urban parks. They're not intended to be a ball field. They're not intended to be a baseball diamond. They're supposed to be something smaller, to reflect that, you're in an urban environment and the park spaces need to be right-sized and designed basically to reflect that urban context. So the squares are much smaller. That's intentional to put the signal that they are going to be smaller spaces. But then also just to kind of, I don't want to say downplay their importance, but it's to explain that they are a piece of a much more urban puzzle, I guess you could say.
Graham, one way or the other, if we're going to have a choice, though, we need one sort of larger, sort of the main gathering spot that you can say, "Hey, I'll meet you at here," or we're going to have some event that's going to be taking place down there that we can bring people to as a place to, to gathering. I mean, and so it needs to be. It can't be too broken up, and if we have to exchange a little bit on a open space in terms of a typical kind of open space that little parks or whatever and in the area, I'd say let's err on the other side, because this area we've got a 1,000-acre park right beside here too, and we've got a whole bunch of center cores of parkish land that is just not being utilized and hardly visible to anybody, and it's just ignored, and we need to really make something out of those, I think. And there's plenty of room for that.
What we've done in the past, yes, I think that makes sense to me. What we've done in the past, Steve actually worked on one of these not that long ago for a site up in Merrifield, is this idea that you have these plazas, these green squares that we can put on the plan map to signal where we think approximately, new urban parks should go. But to your point, like having kind of like a centralized central park, we call it a signature park in planning parlance, but I think that's what you're after. Something bigger, something that's central, something that's kind of core to the identity of the area. And typically it's going to be a little bit, yeah. So assuming that would be in Gunston, but I don't want to, maybe I shouldn't assume.
Yeah, I don't think that you could assume that. I mean, it could be on the edge of Gunston or whatever. I mean, you know, again, there isn't a lot of space at Gunston. I don't want to impede on its space too much either. So we've got to find a place where we can make it work without losing, something like that.
Okay.
And,
That makes
and,
sense.
and like I said, let's just try to create something on that and let's highlight that exactly where the parks or whatever things to go. I think we should try to, try to figure that later as what makes sense, on the plan. So just my thought.
Yeah, that's a good one. I appreciate that. And I think that's consistent with a lot of the guidance that the Planning Commission has given us recently on prior amendments. I think like Pan Am Shopping Center, which Tim Sargent probably remembers, and several others where consolidated larger urban park spaces are preferred over kind of disparate and smaller spaces just because you just get more bang for your buck if you get a bigger spot. So yeah, we can make that change.
Anyone else on page 6 or 7? Yeah, I agree. It's kind of like the prime directive that we have, and it's these things can augment them or help to reinforce them, but can't, if we're not careful, they could replace some of the opportunities, or we'll fall short on opportunities. So there's got to be a balance, but those things should be adjectives to the central idea.
I would suggest perhaps on line 32 that, and when it says Lower Potomac Planning District, include clearly identified and linked trails, because that could just trails to where and to what. I think one of the problems that needs to be shown is we have the trail map. People don't go to the trail map to see where how everything is linked together.
Which line are you on, Dale? I'm not able to see.
I would have been line 32. Clearly identified and linked trails.
That linked point is so important because we have so many really nice trails around that just lack some core connections.
Yes.
I mean, we got really good trails. They're just not connected. Like the cross-country trail's not connected to the eastern stuff. Mesa Neck Trail not connected to the central. Just the connection of trails is huge.
And just to say, I for another committee on South County Federation I reviewed the 2022-2024 DEQ water quality study, and the least of the worries in water quality, any of the feeders from Dobe Creek to Little Hunting Creek to Pohick Creek to any of these have Hose Road Creek, any of these is stormwater runoff. Those are the least of the issues that were identified by that water study. Believe me.
Okay, down to page 8. I struggled with this at first when I saw it. I don't know if there's a way we can add in some roads or names of places to kind of point them out. I was trying to figure out where Route 1 was on here, and Lorton Road and Armistead and Gunston Plaza. I guess when I found it, looked awfully small, maybe. Just some better ways to identify kind of spots. When you first look at it, I had to pull up kind of Google Maps to kind of make my way around a bit. And I know that what is it? The trails in the yellow and red intersects seem mighty dominant. Maybe that's what we were kind of going for, but
Yeah, and this is just a an early draft, and the when our GIS team when our GIS team when we hand this to them, they'll have a better way of, I guess, increasing the font, putting fonts in that are going to be that'll provide and identify the roads, as well as like a lot of the features that are out there, like the VRE station and things of that nature. With this, it was just to give this general idea that the recommendation is for the plan to have this network that connects all these proposed park spaces, these potential new parks, to the open space and all the existing parks and recreation features that are already out there. So
Stephen, it's just that the map is unusable. It's just because you can't see. It's hard to really decipher it, so it's not usable. So just
this won't be the next map you see.
All right, so let's just not talk, since it's not going to be being used. We're not going to use this map at any point in time. There's no point in discussing it too much.
Well, I think the discussion point is do you all agree that there should be a map that ties all these things together? And that's the big question. And I think we've heard that from you all tonight. So.
Yeah, the map of the core area, I think, is important. It just has to be usable. I mean, if we're struggling with it, imagine people who are not as familiar with the area, they're really going to struggle with it. But yeah, if the map folks could kind of take those points and work their magic. Any other comments on this? At least the map, I guess, before we move down to the next section. Not seeing any. Down to kind of top of page 8 or bottom of page 8, the housing, and then page 9. Any comments on here?
I think your first sentence under housing is extremely important and an appropriate lead for that.
While we list kind of varying densities, would it be beneficial to add something that is relative to an increase of?
Nick, increase of what exactly? I apologize.
Densities.
Oh, I see.
I mean, we're kind of saying varying densities. Well, we have a bit of that now, but that. Yes, there still needs to be a variety, but the variety needs to shift in the upwards trajectory.
On line 2, on right here, we got the following, which is increased as densities consistent with the land use framework should be considered as appropriate. Basically, just describing it with the activity transect model that we've gone over with the land use. But that's not quite what you're after. I think what you're talking about is density in and of itself helping to kind of help facilitate that greater supply and long-term affordability, right? I think is that what you're after in kind of establishing that link?
Well, not necessarily directly related to affordability, but that will be a benefit of it. But the varying densities, I guess I was focused on line 11 there, increasing for a variety of reasons. One is to increase the number of people or number of heads that we have in the area, as well as I guess this is focused on housing. So varying densities could be single family homes, townhomes, but then somehow some of that that has to increase the number.
Yep. Okay. If we add it here, that might capture it. So increasing the density and supply.
Okay.
Supply and density, or I mean, it's better there.
Just to set an expectation level, I guess the expectation is for it to increase. And that will have the added benefit of obviously affordability and everything that goes with it. Anyone else on page housing or page 9?
On line 13, after Minnick House, comma, I would add King's Arms, which is on Old Colchester Road and adjacent to where the town of Colchester was found. And that's a significant Revolutionary War site. The King's Arms. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Wow. Yep. Okay.
Okay.
And then, Steve, you want to explain? So that was the area-wide considerations, which are kind of higher order ideas. And then this is a slightly different section. Y'all have gone over the land use framework, and maybe Steve, do you have that map? Because that might be helpful to look at very briefly before we go into this, just so they can see what we're talking about in this section.
Yes.
Okay.
It was in the presentation. Am I showing the present? Am I presenting now?
No, not yet.
Oh, okay.
But go ahead now. Yeah, you're good.
Hey, Dale, real quick. I'm tired, and I might not be right about this, but isn't it Fairfax Arms, not King's Arms? I know what you're talking about.
Let me check that because
we better just make sure that's right. I know exactly.
Our resident historian living, diagonally across is my last connection on that. And I'll do that at the Mount Vernon District Day. I'll check.
Okay, might be Fairfax Arms.
Might be. It very well might be.
Okay.
This was the original land use framework map that was in the first draft text that you all reviewed. And again, this is another one that's being worked on now by our GIS team to kind of to create, to make it more readable, and also create a legend that gets to the land use framework. But in that framework, in that November meeting, you may recall that the framework defined where the core area is, and it talked about the different activity nodes, specifically in identifying where those 6 activity nodes are of Lorton Station, Lorton Marketplace, Gunston Plaza, the community center, and then the employment activity on Route 1 in those 2 locations. First is, I guess, midway between the core area and Occoquan, and then the employment area, the areas recommended for employment and innovation that are right there to the north of the Occoquan. So that's the land use framework. And when you first looked at that, we identified all those different areas. We identified the established residential neighborhoods. We identified the core area in those activity nodes. We also identified in this darker pink color the transact activity zones as well. And in yellow, we had the low density residential uses, and in green, in the different shades of green, we had the open space and parks. But there were some things that were missing that weren't fully defined yet, and those were the parks and open space. We didn't. What you saw before was what's currently adopted in the comp plan. There was also an environmentally sensitive areas that are, and you saw that the way it's currently written in the comp plan. You saw public facilities the way it's currently written in the comp plan, and our partnering agencies from Parks and Public Works, and also our Environment Review branch in the Department of Planning and Development. They were still working with us to draft this text. So the text that you're seeing tonight is the text that that we work with them on, and that's what you reviewed. So this will really take, after we have this discussion, we'll be taking what you reviewed and what you discussed tonight and putting that in place of what you saw in the form of the old adopted plan in that framework. So kind of like Graham was saying, the first part is area-wide considerations about these topics. And then the next thing kind of gets into what is uniquely Lorton about heritage resources, about the parks and open space and things of that nature. So.
So like a couple of the ones that we'll be going over are the light green and the dark green. So
yeah.
Steve, I pulled up the one that's got the legend on it just so they could see that one. So it's this one right here is Parks and Rec, and then public facilities, which it does include a couple of the parks, and then environmentally sensitive areas. Switch back over to stop sharing this one. Okay.
I think we were down below this now on page 9. Anyone else have anything on page 9?
I think is this my screen sharing or yours, Graham?
Yeah, I think you're sharing. Steve, if you don't mind, I'll switch back real quick. Hold on one second.
Yeah, okay.
Too many things.
Graham has all the edits.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay. All right. So we switched the name from environmentally sensitive areas, which we had talked about in November, to just open space and natural resources.
Are you sharing it?
Yeah,
you're seeing it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good. Anyone else on page 9? Scroll down page 10. Let's see. Anyone on page 10?
For some reason, I'm not seeing your screen, Graham.
Oh, really?
Is everyone else seeing his screen?
Or? Yeah, I see his screen.
Oh.
Are you on the Zoom Workplace page?
Yes. I just see.
Can you see us?
I see you. Yeah. I see you're covering the whole screen.
Go up to Nick's face, and there should be a thing where it's a box that you can expand, and from there you should be able to.
Don't expand my face.
Not Nick's face, but there's gonna be a box. There's a little button for expanding the Zoom window.
Okay, let's see.
Hey, Steven, just as a heads up, if you were to go up to the very top, it shows your screen and it shows Graham's screen as well. So you might have to click on Graham's name to see his sharing.
Okay.
Because I can still see your screen share, but I'm also looking at Graham's screen share right now.
You can toggle kind of back and forth.
So the thing to do is to make sure that
your sharing's off. Yeah. Okay.
I'm trying to open that screen, but I'm sorry.
Did anybody have any other questions or edits on this one? On this section, this is page 10.
Page 10. Check here. Just, I guess the only comment I have, there's a lot of talk about preservation, and I think that's fine as long as it's kind of auxiliary to the primary plan of building that core.
Mhm. Okay.
There was a sentence down there also about limited opportunity for trails. And whereas I agree we've got some definite good trails to my earlier comments, we've got some huge opportunities to connect them. And I wouldn't want to minimize the importance of trails. That statement has a little bit of a minimizing effect, in my opinion. I think
Which line are you on?
I think it's on like line 45 and 46. It
Okay.
said, I remember that you've scrolled up and down, but it said, well,
I see.
Maybe
I see what
we
you're
in
could.
some cases, there's include.
I see what you're
Anyway,
saying.
there was a line that literally said there a limited opportunity for something, and I didn't, whereas I'm agreeing.
Mhm.
It doesn't need to be a huge emphasis, but we can't discourage the trails at all because again, the connection opportunities we have are huge.
It should,
Couldn't
I think it should
Linwood,
say providing a few recreational facilities aside from trails.
why don't we just say exactly what Linwood said, which is we want to preserve any potential trail connections.
Yeah.
So any trail connections should be preserved.
Or
If that,
maximize trail connections.
we don't need more trails in itself, but we do need trail connections themselves.
Yeah.
I get it. Yeah, the statement. Yep, got it.
It's inclusive of recreational facilities.
Mhm.
Some cases these.
Understood. Yeah, I think Linwood, that's a good point, and I think we can. This one, actually reading it now, does seem kind of out of place because this is a statement about what is today, and we shouldn't really be focused more on that. It should be more focused on what we want it to be. And so I think that's fine. I think that's a good one. I think this is saying that there are currently few recreation facilities besides trails. So I think that we can turn that into something about.
We
Yeah, we want
still
the trails.
might not be on the right sentence. I swear there was a sentence that said
Oh, really?
limited opportunity for trails. If you
Oh,
find it, if
it's right
you,
here.
yeah,
Yeah.
provide some. There you go. That's it. Provide some limited opportunities for expanding. Again, the opportunities that are there are huge to tying to the great opportunities that we already have. Tim's concept was the right concept to my, I don't know that we've identified the right words yet.
Preserve any potential trail connecting locations.
Well, not only preserve though, but promote.
Well, okay.
That's all, because that's
I agree. Promote and preserve and protect. I mean, preserving them means we're not letting them get away, and whatever we can do with them, that part is on the trail systems. But yep, I agree.
Yeah, but to get the trails that we really lack right now are the ones to get out of the core onto the great trails that we have. There's no way to get out of the core and onto the Mason Neck
I'm with you.
Trail, and there's no
Totally.
way to get to the Jerry Connolly Cross Country Trail from the core. We need to connect the core to those great trail opportunities.
That's right. I agree with you completely.
So if you could think of even a better way, go for it, Graham.
Yeah, no, I got the wheels turning here, and I think this sentence. We'll work on this, Linwood. I think I get what you're after.
Yeah,
this sentence was really related to the stream valleys, where in some instances there's some sensitivity around RPA trails and that sort of thing. I know exactly what you're talking about, though. It's not really so much about that. It's more about broader connectivity and making sure that we got connections between the core and regional assets, like you're just describing, as well as within. And because we wanted, to Nick's point, wanted to make sure that it's a walkable, pedestrian-oriented district kind of within the core as well. So
yeah, and maybe that's actually a new thing is opportunity for access with trails out of the core 2 trails. So that's far from an elegant way to say it, but you got the concept.
I do. Yeah. Regional assets, CCT, Mason and other things. Side. Yeah. Sounds good. Okay. Any other questions? Yeah.
Comments on just some general things that just kind of doing a find through here. The words town center only appear twice, and they're really just kind of footnotes in the one at the bottom, and one is under environment. But we've never actually used the word kind of center or town center kind of throughout the document. And then just a note of, there's a sentence on page 9, line 33 about, the county, let me find where it says here, page 9, is it 43, 42, through county acquisition of additional parkland. So green and open spaces should be preserved through county acquisition of additional parkland. I guess I don't see anywhere in here where really we're stressing the fact that any future growth in the core area is most likely going to have to be done by redevelopment of current or greens or currently developed areas or green areas. I'm sure I'm articulating this well, but the only way this is going to work for most of the areas with redevelopment of existing developed areas, as well as not necessarily taking green and open spaces and converting them into additional parkland being purchased by the county. I guess I'm looking for, is our prime focus on kind of creating that town center? We're not really using certainly those words in the document, and stressing that a lot of this creation that we're looking for is going to have to be done by redevelopment of currently underserving or opportunity zones of redeveloping.
I'm sorry, I just assumed there was going to be a whole nother page just on that exact point, which is what is the purpose and what's the vision for this place? And I don't see the vision. And in fact, we used to call this Lorton visioning. So I don't see where the vision is ever outlined in terms of a vision. We say what we're going to protect. We say we're doing this, that, and the other, but the vision, I think, maybe needs to be really laid out. Is that what you're saying?
Didn't we at one point have a bit of a vision statement? I mean, our vision statements common in comprehensive plan language.
You've already reviewed those sections. This section about open space and natural resources is mainly addressing those areas that are identified as open space and natural resources. Those are not those areas that are green on the map that are identified that have that label. Is the only part that this is addressing. You reviewed everything about development in the first 2 meetings.
So it's just not on here.
Okay,
it's just not on here.
Yeah,
it's not on here. This
we're not doing that again.
Yeah, that's what I figured. Okay.
But to your point, Nick, about making sure that it's clear that most of the new green space, whether it's preserving stream valleys or getting new active parks or whatever through redevelopment, you're right. And vast majority of it's probably going to be through that. So we can make that point a little bit more clear. What did we have? What section were we on?
Page 9.
Page 9. Thank you.
And I think there is a part in there that talks about how private development is gonna the private development or redevelopment at higher intensities is one of the ways that we're gonna have to rely on the ability to get new park spaces for things like those plazas and central greens and things that we talked about before. There is language that talks about that as well. Yep. In the park section.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay. Anyone else on page 10, is it? Right.
Yes. Yeah, we were on 10.
Yeah. All right, move down to page 11. Anyone have anything on page 11?
And on this page, when you go to line 15, that's where we talk about opportunities for future development should also be leveraged to address the needs for additional parkland, high quality amenities, greater variety of activities within community-wide parks and open space networks. So that's, if you take a look at that, see if that's what you were getting at, Nick.
We'll clean that. I think we could probably clean that up, Steve, as we look at it, since it's similar language to what in those two different sections. So we can clean that up, make it a little bit more streamlined. Good.
All right, anyone else on page 11? All right, scrolling down to just kind of in the bit of the extras here. Parks and Recreation recommendations. Any comments here?
What is Lorton Southgate?
There's a Lorton Park, which is the park at the community center. And then there's also a Southgate Park.
I'm sorry, this is something that already exists, or what?
All this language exists in the adopted plan.
I just don't know where this Lorton
I don't know where Southgate is. Where's Southgate?
Let's see. I can tell you. I think Southgate Park is connected with a Southgate subdivision.
Never heard of one.
It looks to be off of Pohick Road. So if you went up Route 1, Tim, made a left on Pohick Road, it was on the right there.
Must be tiny, okay?
Yeah.
It is a little bit outside our area, I guess. But
what is it we're saying about that? That's any neighborhood park should be provided in conjunction with development. I mean, I don't think we really even quite go that far, do we?
Steve, is this all adopted text?
This is all adopted text.
This is a Word document. This is what I want to make one of these things. Scotty's microphone.
This is all adopted text. So one of the changes I think that we would probably see being made here
these are folders,
is provided in conjunction with the development plan for the core area, because we are with this plan, we are expanding a lot of the recommendations that were originally identified as the town center, which became the town center around the VRE station, to core area recommendations, and also improving on those recommendations. So that recommendation for neighborhood parks facilities should be for the core area itself, not just for the town center now.
And what does Mason Neck West mean? Is that opposed to Mason Neck East?
It's a park.
Any idea? Linwood, any idea where that is?
Yeah,
Mason
it's
Mason
down,
Neck
down.
Mason Neck West is a specific park on the west side of Old Colchester Road, just south of Giles Run Road. It's got a baseball field on it and tennis court.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. I know what it is. Okay. Thank you.
And we'll work with park authority staff too, because like we were saying, this is the adopted text. There may be some other recommendations that there may be changes to how some of this information is reflected, like how that one for neighborhood park says should be provided in conjunction with development plan for the town center. The town center is already built, and now we're talking about core areas. So we'll work with park authority staff to update this entire section, and also make sure that it's clear that these are parks and that there are no other parks in the suburban center that are missing from this list.
I think this is a little confusing just because it says district parks as if they exist.
Yes.
And then it says the suburban center is not served by an existing district park. It,
And I don't know how the Newington Heights Park could be expanded except all the way through Laurel Hill to get close to the suburban center. It's a mile away. So that there's something that doesn't make sense there.
Under the historic resource parks, can somebody change that as a historic resource park? After Old Colchester, as a historic. But I think it would be great if maybe you could work with the park authority folk to define this whole page and add any.
There are some other parks around though that have some historic attributes besides, but you're right that I think that's specifically intended for Old Colchester Park and Preserve. But there's other historic stuff around Barrett House and stuff like that.
Okay.
I imagine this page might be a bit dated. I think working with the park authority could really update it and modernize it.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, you can tell. I mean, this is talking about in conjunction with the development planned for the town center. I mean, it hasn't been touched in 30 years, probably.
Yeah.
So it's time.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. All right. We'll check back with FCPA on this, and we'll include this with we'll include an update to this with the version that you'll see next.
Yeah. Okay. So moving on to page 13.
Fairfax Arms, you are right, Linwood. It's not Kings, it's Fairfax Arms.
Is this is the Lorton Heritage Society still going?
Not to the best of my knowledge.
Technically, yes.
I'm just wondering, this looks like a page that is also maybe dated and can do with an update.
It looks like it's been updated a little bit. It does talk about Indian Springs Park, farm being demolished.
Yeah, this is updated from the list that that's on file. This is my attempt at it, but the next step is to provide this to our Heritage Resources branch for their updates as well. So
I don't see anything obviously wrong with this page. I obviously have a conflict and a bias, but disclosing that, I don't see anything wrong with it.
okay. We'll definitely work with them to double check it though. Just to in the past they indicated that they didn't think there were any updates needed, but then when I looked at it, it looked like it was missing a lot of the stuff, a lot of information from their updated list of historic resources in that area. So I added them as a first crack.
Okay. Anyone else on page 13? Not seeing any. What else was on the agenda? I know we're way into overtime.
That was it.
Okay.
Adjournment's on the agenda.
Adjournment. Yeah, it's bottom of page 13.
Yeah. So
I know we've kept folks a long time, and I appreciate everybody's input. And no one for long goodbyes. If there's anything else, Graham or Steve, you need from us tonight?
nothing I can think of it except just mentioning again that with the information we received from you all tonight, we'll compile this with all the rest of the information you looked at before on land use, and we'll be sending out the entire document except for the transportation information that you haven't seen before. And I'll try to get out to you ahead of time because it'll be good to have the land use, have a good picture for what the land use says as you talk about transportation too, to make sure that what transportation, what comes through a transportation matches with what you've seen and recommended for the land use language.
Great.
And then after that transportation meeting, we'll only have one more meeting, knock on wood, for you all to vote and make a unified task force recommendation.
And that meeting, sorry, is February 26th, was it?
The transportation meeting is February 26th, and the final vote is March 16th. We're going to try to give you as much time to look at all the information as possible and still wrap this thing up with you all before the end of the quarter.
Yeah. Okay, so everybody could just put a calendar mark for February 26th for the next one. That's all I have. Have anything else? Otherwise, adjourn for the evening.